Most smartphone buying guides that you'll watch on YouTube right now will tell you how to buy a smartphone in 2023. But I thought let's do something slightly differently. Let's take a look at the future and let me try to help you how to buy a right smartphone for you next year in 2024. If I have to borrow a term from the gaming world, then I'm trying to find out the right minimum system requirements for the next phone that you're gonna buy. So if you're here for the very first time, welcome to our first smartphone buying guide. I am Ashad. You're watching Trakin Tech English, your destination for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. Alright, for the classification of price categories, I'm going with a slight variation of IDC's classification, IDC India's classification. To be entirely honest, I'm doing this for the sake of sanity so that classification becomes much easier. And we can all trust IDC to do a good job with the market classification and the price segment classification, considering IDC is the brand that we trust for shipment data. Not just us, even the brands trust for shipment data. Anyway, the categories are there for you to see on the screen. So now let me start off by recommending what you should be looking out for when you're buying a budget phone under 20,000 rupees. Now I want to put it out there. If you're buying a phone above rupees 10,000, then ensure that it supports 5G and you have a 5G network ready SIM like Airtel or Jio. Performance is also very vital, so I'll tell you that you need to look at a good system on chip, which is very, very important because I'm presuming that you will want to hold on to the phone for at least a year or two. I'd suggest that if you're buying a phone in between the 10 to 15,000 rupee price category, we've tested the Snapdragon 4 Gen 2 and it's a very, very good processor, especially the fact that it doesn't throttle at all. And for the phones in the 17 to 20,000 price category, you can look at the Dimensity 1050, 1080 and something like the Snapdragon 778G as well, which actually has become a very old chip. So I'm presuming that you will have phones with that chip, in the 17 to 20,000 price category. My only suggestion is just don't buy a phone with Snapdragon 695, come what may. Now, if you're buying a phone closer to the 20,000 price category, look out for an AMOLED display with high refresh rate, typically 90 or 120, but AMOLED plus 60 should also be fine. But LCD plus 60 is not. If you're buying a phone in the 15 to 20,000 price category, if it has an LCD display, it should have high refresh rate. It should have 120 Hz refresh rate. The bare minimum is an LCD display, of course, 60 Hz refresh rate and full HD resolution. Don't buy an HD resolution phone in 2024. Display is the window to everything that you do with your phone. So don't make a compromise over there if you ask me. Now, with respect to battery and battery charging speeds, don't make a compromise. 5000 mAh bare minimum and 33 watt fast charging speeds as well. Now, if you're talking about cameras, I wouldn't want to recommend camera specs specifically because what matters more is the camera tuning. So I'd like to recommend certain brands that do well with camera setups under rupees 20,000. So you can look at a Redmi phone, a Samsung phone or a Vivo/iQOO phone if you want a good camera performance per se, because what happens is that generally the computational photography and HDR algorithms that they use on their flagship phones sort of trickles down to give you some sort of a good image with their phones as well. And sometimes with certain SKUs, Motorola does good with processing as well. So certain Moto phones do a good job of photography. For example, the Moto G82 was pretty decent. And so was the G73. As for the software on these phones, I think that most of them will come with Android 14. If they don't buy it. It should have a bare minimum of Android 14 by default and at least give you 2 years of software update, if not one. But yeah, I mean, in certain situations, you can go with one as well. And by certain situations, I mean, if the phone is from 10 to 15,000 rupees, anything above 15,000, 2 years of software update would actually be better. Moving on to the category that has defined the movement of the average selling price higher and higher every year. The mid-range phone segment that starts at rupees 20,000 and ends at rupees 30,000. This clearly is the highest growth segment for most brands. People are spending more because brands are giving them flagship grade features as well. I've seen a lot of experiments with the industrial design this year around. Many brands actually brought out curved displays and curved phones as well. But let me tell you this, you don't have to buy a phone with a curved display if you have to make a compromise on certain features like the camera or the battery. A flat display with very minimal bezels are absolutely fine too, if you ask me. For example, the Redmi Note 13 Pro series, the bezels are so slim. Another thing that I noticed this year with this price category especially is that the flagship features that have trickled down. So IP rating, wireless charging and 200 MP cameras have become commonplace now. But this is definitely not minimum system requirement. You can compromise on these things if you get like a fantastically powerful processor. Say for example, you get a 7 Plus Gen 2 phone but with no IP rating, I'd say okay, fine, go ahead for it because then performance is fantastic on it. Now, one of the things that most phones in this price class are doing is providing with an AMOLED panel. See, LCDs are not bad per se, but having an AMOLED panel in this price category would be good, and I would say that is definitely a minimum spec requirement. So AMOLED panels with 120 Hz refresh rate should be a non-negotiable mostly. And some of these brands are also doing HDR playback by default. In fact, Xiaomi gives you Dolby Vision, and it's democratized Dolby Vision even in this price category, which is something that is really, really good. Now, with respect to performance, I think that the Snapdragon 7S Gen 2 is going to become a very popular chip because it's going to be cheaper. It's actually cheaper than the 7 Plus Gen 2. So yeah, I think a lot of brands will adopt that, and that seems like a good chip as well. And I guess Dimensity 1080, Dimensity 7050, all of that will be popular as well. But what I'm expecting and what I would tell you is that you need to look at an Antutu score of anywhere between 7 lakh to a million in this price class, maybe 6 lakh to a million, so that you know that the performance is going to be good enough and last you 2 years without any worry. Also, the chip matters because the ISP inside should be good, because most of these phones have good camera setups these days. 200 MPs become common. In fact, Realme apparently is going to bring back the telephoto to the Realme number series this year, so that seems exciting as well. But if you ask me, just give me a good primary camera and a good ultra wide angle camera. A hardware setup like the Nothing Phone 1 is like something that I absolutely prefer. And like I said, the algorithm matters the most. So Vivo, Samsung, and sometimes even Realme and Redmi do a fairly decent job in this price class. Now, with respect to the battery, you can expect 5000 mAh batteries inside most big phones. But in this price class, you will notice that the minimum screen size is about 6.4 inches. Lower than that is very rare to find. And mostly the screen sizes are about 6.5, 6.6, 6.67 inches as well. And 45 watt charging speed, I think, should be baseline in this price category. I mean, 45 watt considering nothing does 45 watt, but most others at least give you 67 watt fast charging speeds. Now, like I said, IP rating and wireless charging are nice features to have on top of these things. So if you're making a slight compromise on the chipsets itself, then you can probably look at curved displays, IP rating, wireless charging as features, as add-ons to expect from brands. With respect to software, baseline Android 14 is non-negotiable, and 2 years of software updates is non-negotiable. Seriously. Now, moving on to the price category, which I feel is a very unique price category, the rupees 30 to 40,000 price category. I call it the super mid-range, but IDC calls it mid to high end. So here, the system on chip is going to be a very big deciding factor. You can expect the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 to trickle down into this price class. For sure, it's already trickled down with the OnePlus 11R, but I'm expecting that on many more phones in the future as well. The Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2 could become more popular in this price category as well. In fact, it should, right? I mean, it's a very, very good chipset and it performs really well as well. It's very surprising that only the Poco F5 got it and not many phones after that. And I think the naming convention itself is a bit of a concern, but yeah, I mean, Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2 should be on more phones. I'm also expecting the Dimensity 9000 to be there on more phones, maybe even the Dimensity 9200, but that I think is expecting too much. Now, if you don't get any one of these high-performing chips inside the phone, and if you have a mid-range chip, like something from the 20 to 30,000 price category, then you need to ensure that you get at least a telephoto camera. No, seriously, they have to do more, right? If they're not giving you the best performing chip, then they should give you maybe an extra telephoto camera, maybe wireless charging, IP rating, all of those things bundled in one package. Again, baseline, you should expect a minimum 5000 mAh battery, 45 watt charging as well. But I think that you can expect 120 watt and 150 watt charging phones in this price class as well. But 67, 80, 100 watt is all going to be very, very common. And mostly with most Chinese players like Oppo, Vivo, OnePlus, all of these guys, you don't have to worry with the charging speeds itself. They're generally taken care of really well these days. And brands like Samsung or Nothing or Pixel generally do end up giving you wireless charging and some form of IP rating as well. Also, I have one wish from this category is the influx of more compact phones, basically the 6.1 inch and 6.4 inch style phones. So hopefully that will happen. Now, as for the software updates, I am hoping that all these phones will come with Android 14 by default. And if any brand promises at least 3 years, and if they promise anything more than that, I'm going to trust them with my money. All right, moving on to the budget premium category, the category that I'm most excited for with respect to what we're going to be getting next year. So this is the price category from 40,000 rupees to 60,000 rupees. So what you can expect with respect to the system on chip is definitely more Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 phones, and maybe even some Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 phones as well. So baseline, I think 8 Gen 2 Dimensity 9000 should be there. That is expected from most brands. but I'm not so sure if every brand will do that. You're definitely going to see a Tensor G3 based Pixel 8a for sure. Now, with respect to cameras, the trend that we're noticing this year is that Sony's stacked Litia sensors are going to be very, very popular. Sony's made a bunch of those. So those are space-saving sensors as well. I really want to see how they stack up in performance. Certain things that are going to be non-negotiables are if it comes with Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 or 8 Gen 3. 8 Gen 3 is a bit of a stretch, but if it comes with that, then Wi-Fi 7 is a non-negotiable. Bluetooth 5.3 is also non-negotiable. And NFC support is must. NFC is being used a lot these days. Now, with respect to the CMF and the ID, a trend that we're noticing is that brands are going back to flat panels. So yeah, but I mean, curved phones could also be there. But if you do get a glass back phone, ensure that you get some form of, Gorilla Glass protection or Dragon Trail protection or short sensation protection, something. And again, vegan leather is going to be invading every price category for sure. IP rating and wireless charging are two features that are going to be very important in this price class. If they're not there, and if you get like crazy good performance or it's like a gaming phone or something, then you can definitely make a compromise on that. One of the things that we're noticing is that battery sizes are going up. I think they're going up from 5000 mAh to 5400 mAh. So better battery life is expected. So we'll have to wait and watch about that. And with respect to software updates, again, Android 14 and baseline 4 years of software support is non-negotiable for me for sure. All right, moving on to the premium price class, the 60,000 plus phones, and next year is going to be really, really exciting for them. So Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 and Dimensity 9300, MediaTek Dimensity 9300, the flagship chips for next year are looking absolutely beastly. So they're not based on TSMC's 3nm fabrication process. In fact, ththey're based on TSMC's 4nm fabrication process. But they are so good. They are so powerful. They're so power efficient this year. I mean, all of the initial benchmark leaks and the performance, benchmarks that we're seeing are looking fantastic for both of these phones. I mean, 2 million Antutu is baseline number. The reference Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 that we tested got 2 million Antutu, and even the Dimensity 9300 is doing 2.2 million Antutu. The Vivo X100 was just launched with the Dimensity 9300 and is doing more than 2.2 million points as well. And that's because the Dimensity 9300 actually has all big cores, no efficient cores, and all these big cores apparently are very, very power efficient this year, because I expected it to be not power efficient and to have thermal throttling issues, but apparently that's not really the case. In fact, it's beating the 8 Gen 3 in almost every single benchmark and doing it while being power efficient as well. I really cannot wait to test it out for myself to see how these phones are performing in real world situations too. So basically, the moral of the story, if you're buying a premium flagship phone above rupees 60,000, they better have one of these chips. And on-device generative AI is going to be a huge deal this year. Especially with a lot of flagship phones, you're going to see brands doing really crazy things with on-device generative AI. In fact, Samsung has created their own ChatGPT competitor called Gauss. So I'm expecting the S24 series to come with the Gauss generative AI model. There were some rumors suggesting that Samsung might give it as a subscription service. I hope that's really not the case. But the way we use phones in the future, in the near future, is going to change as well. But one thing's for certain, all of these phones, the Dimensity 9300 phones, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 phones, are definitely going to be the Tensor G3 when it comes to NPU processing. Now, ID and CMF wise, you will get premium glass materials for sure. Glass builds are going to be there, maybe even Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2. And there are a lot of Android phones coming with the titanium build as well. The Xiaomi 14 Pro did come with that. In fact, a special edition one of it. In fact, even the S24 Ultra is expected to come with it. Displays looks like it, all of them will come with 3000 nits of peak brightness, and they will definitely have at least 120 Hz refresh rate minimum. And if there are certain Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 phones, certain Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 based gaming phones, they might even go up to 240 Hz of refresh rate. LTPO is baseline, you can expect it 1 Hz. Low refresh should also be possible. Variable refresh rate for better battery life should also be possible. HDR support, bare minimum of HDR10 support or Dolby Vision is also going to be present on all of these flagship phones for sure. One of the things that I suggest to look out for, especially on Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 phone, is if that phone supports Snapdragon Seamless and Snapdragon Sound as well. Snapdragon Sound, because Snapdragon Sound is actually looking very good for lossless Bluetooth, wireless audio. I did test it out. It sounds fantastic. But Snapdragon Seamless, because I think that Snapdragon Seamless is truly going to be the future of how Android will compete with Apple. More importantly, Android and other allied ecosystems like Windows, Linux, all of them will come together to compete with Apple. And the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 phone could, with seamless support, could be a stepping stone into experiencing it. So can't really wait and watch to see how that pans out. Cameras will continue to do crazy things with generative AI. Of course, you're going to get like generative AI predictive fill options. And apart from that, you're also going to get, features like night mode in video. You can also expect like focus tracking and face tracking features like Apple already does with its iPhones. There's a strong rumor that the S24 Ultra will actually move from a 10x periscope to a 5x periscope, but that's also going to be okay because in-sensor crop is going to be a huge thing in phones next year. So 5x to 10x, I think Samsung can do that with maintaining the quality as well and by improving the algorithms too. So yeah, computational photography in different forms is going to be fantastic. And with respect to flagship phones, most of these flagship phones come with good cameras and great HDR as well. In fact, the Xiaomi 14 Pros initial samples look good. In fact, even the OnePlus 12 is looking very, very good. Battery sizes will vary on the size of the phone. The S24, the smallest one, will come with a smaller battery size, but baseline 5000 mAh can be expected. In fact, certain phones are expected to do 5400 mAh as well. But in flagship phones, you can expect the charging speeds to actually go down because, of course, the faster charging speeds are in the budget, flagship, and super mid-range category. Minimum 4 to 5 years of software updates is something that you should expect. Google is doing 7 years. I think even I would say that go and demand brands to give you 5 years of software updates. Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4, NFC, all of these should be standards, and of course a lot of 5G band support as well. Now finally for iPhones, well, it's very simple. If you're not buying the latest and greatest iPhone 16 or the iPhone 16 Pro, wait for the sales, Diwali sales and the festive sales for the iPhone 15 and the 15 Pro's price to go down, because both of these phones this year are fantastic. Alright, so this was a smartphone buying guide suggestion based on what we expect 2024 to be like. Hopefully this will help you make the right choice when you go and buy a phone. So don't forget to save this video for future reference. Definitely it'll come in handy because then you'll be able to figure out if the minimum spec requirements have been met. Also, it'll help to write down what do you expect from your future phone. And of course, share this video with your friends as well. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep Trakin and stay safe.